Everybody, welcome to the Free Market Cash Patient webinar series. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Froman. This program is sponsored by YourFreedomHub.com. And today we've got a really exciting guest on. You're going to see some more about some cutting-edge aspects to health in America. These videos are archived, and the web address is Brighton, BRIGHTON.com/channel/Freedom Hub. And so you're going to want to take a look at some of these past ones we've been having. They've really been quite fantastic. So Charles, if you would.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome, Dr. Curatola. Very exciting to have you as our guest because as Forbes magazine featured for Jeff and me, Jerry and everyone else, we are considered our health company one of the better Affordable Care Act alternatives out there for the patient, especially with our combination of medical cost sharing, health savings accounts, concierge shopping help, and global med access. But as we create cash payers, which really is our big niche, we're finding that patients are educating themselves to avoid the doctor and find better deals. And to that end, they're finding about integrative care or natural care. And that brings us to this better level of dentistry, these holistic dentists. And in fact, Jerry is one of those. And he is the owner and founder of Revitin Life Sciences. And which has as one of its flagship products this prebiotic toothpaste, which apparently is the world's only version. And he got his DDS from New York University. And we're going to talk about why holistic dentistry is the way to go for cash payers. Dr. Curatola is an oral health contributor for the Dr. Oz Show and Fox and Martha Stewart. He is the executive director of the American Center for Bioregulatory Medicine and Dentistry. And we are excited about tonight's guest, Jeff.
This is great. Well, you know, I really enjoyed your introduction because what you are doing in the world of health insurance, we are trying to do in the world of dentistry. So we're going to teach patients that going to the dentist could also be like entering a minefield for your health. What biologic dentists do differently than regular dentists are they're conscious of the fact that there is toxicity in the mouth that has very profound effects for the whole body. Probably the number one, Time magazine, and I'll show a slide of it, but number one source of chronic inflammation in the body is gum disease. Another source of major toxicity, for example, which I'm not going to get into tonight, is mercury fillings. Those silver-colored fillings in your mouth at 52% mercury. They're off-gassing, they're a source of chronic toxicity. And when a non-biologic dentist removes those fillings without the proper protection, they are exposing that patient to unsafe levels of mercury. And as a matter of fact, they're exposing their entire staff to levels of mercury vapor that OSHA would come in if they were there and close that office down. So I highlighted just three things tonight: gum disease, cavitations, and cancer. And I like the fact that you are saying that cash patients can actually save money with now they're consumers. They're not, they're consumers of healthcare rather than being relegated by an insurance company to go to the cheapest guys, the cheapest dentist they can go to, because the dentist is quote unquote on their plan. And that dentist is not only using the cheapest materials, not only doing that, the margin that dentist has to make a profit can only be sustainable if he's doing it the cheapest, the quickest, and often with little attention to the toxicity and systemic health effects that can come from that type of practice environment. So let's get into it. Oral health, is probably on the front line of your ability to be well. So there are doctors all over talking about detoxing patients and gut health and improving their gut, and they have leaky gut and they have all kinds of autoimmune problems. And I'm always amazed if they're not looking in the mouth, because 90% of toxicity in the human body comes from the mouth. How much so? Well, let's just take a look at gum disease and body health. So gum disease is linked to osteoporosis, stroke, 3 to 4 times higher risk of brain stroke, Alzheimer's and dementia. A very, very strong correlation between gum disease and Alzheimer's and dementia. Cancer, lots of cancer. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute. Respiratory disease, heart disease, diabetes, and rheumatoid arthritis, all linked to that. And men are 3 times more likely to be impotent, 14 times more likely to develop cancers. And we have, you can see kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer, blood cancers. But the link with diabetes is unmistakable. Puberty and menstruation, pregnancy complications in women, and menopause, 86% more likely to develop gum disease during menopause. This is a big problem. Again, gum disease can increase the risk of breast cancer, lung cancer, esophageal cancer, gallbladder cancer, melanoma skin cancer, and I'll throw in one more, colorectal cancer. Gum disease and colorectal cancer. And I'm going to tell you why tonight. And what I tell you tonight can save your life. I wrote a book that connects the mouth and the body, and it talks about the mouth as a mirror and a gateway, and it talks about the chronic low-grade oral disease as a major source of inflammation through your whole body, which I spoke about. So let's look at 12 facts you can't ignore about the mouth-body connection. And by the way, let me preface this by saying in 2006, the Aetna Health Insurance Company did a study on 145,000 patients, and they found that improving the health of the mouth can reduce your healthcare costs by an average of 21%, 23% for diabetes patients, 19% for cerebral vascular disease, but an average of 21% for patients with diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of these things. By the way, that translates, are you ready for this? That translates into savings of $750 billion from our economy. That's right, over $750 billion in our economy by improving the health of your mouth in 1 year. So how big is this nonsense with health insurance? And by the way, I met a patient this morning who worked for the Metropolitan Insurance Company, and she was given a 3-week course in how to deny claims. How about that? 3 weeks so that you go through hoops, pay all these outrageous premiums, and you're at the mercy of the insurance company that's teaching their staff how to deny claims. That came to me this morning from a patient. So the 12 facts, 80% of you listening have gum disease if you're over 35. That's what we call an epidemic. 95% of Americans who have diabetes also have gum disease. Gum disease is linked to Alzheimer's, obstructive sleep apnea. How about that for a mouth-body connection? Diabetes. I talked to you about lowering medical costs. You look at that 4th item down on the left, the annual medical costs associated with diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and pregnancy. Lower medical costs all around, you improve the health of your mouth. How important is it to go to a biologic dentist? When I finish with this 30, 40-minute presentation, I think you'll be running to one, because you cannot afford to ignore what's going on in your mouth. And most conventional dentists are not aware, they're not conscious of the toxicity and the long-term systemic effects and how we should be doing things differently. So nearly half of Americans have periodontal disease, the most severe form, periodontitis. That is, you have 80% of you have gum disease, and half of Americans have the most severe type, periodontitis. And then women with periodontal disease, 7 times greater chance of having a premature low-weight baby, preeclampsia, and a lot of other serious problems. So the father of this mouth-body connection, I can't take credit. I wrote the book, The Mouth-Body Connection, which is at Barnes & Noble's, Amazon. You can look at it. It's not only an informative book, it's easy to read, and it's written for the level of a patient. So it is not a heavy, sciencey, techie book. I recommend that everyone get the book, not because I wrote it, but because it will give you valuable information on how you can maintain the health of your mouth and the health of your body. The father of the mouth-body connection, Dr. Weston Price, 1917, he was talking about the relationship of mouth infection to systemic disease. He's actually often called the Charles Darwin of nutrition. He postulated so many amazing things about the relationship of your mouth to the rest of your body. Even for those of you who may know, he really postulated about epigenetics, that disease in your mouth not only messes up your teeth and the bone and your body, but it damages your genes, that subsequent generations are affected as well. So the mouth is a mirror to the body. We know there are acupuncture meridians. Every tooth connects energetically on an acupuncture meridian to an organ in the body. I'm not going to belabor this tonight. This is truly fascinating. Our immune system is more than a biological mass of immune cells, and it is actually an energetic system as well. This shield that our body has, and a literal electromagnetic shield that is this energetic shield around our body that also is around every organ system connecting to every tooth. So think of your teeth as circuit breakers for the rest of your body. And your tongue, Chinese medicine always looked at the tongue, but we could see so many things. I always look at the tongue as a mirror for what's going on, whether it's a vitamin deficiency, candida, fungal infections. Look at the top left one on fissures. That there has been a correlation of fissures with psoriasis, skin disorder, all kinds of things, hormonal imbalances, looking at the tongue. But I'm going to focus a little bit more for you right now over the next few minutes about the mouth as a gateway and how big this gateway is. It's a huge gateway, folks. Gum disease bacteria is deemed a catalyst for cancer cell growth. This was April 2015. So it's a big gateway. Periodontal pathogens, this was just 2 weeks ago. This study came in my email. Periodontal pathogens, risk factors for cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Cause for consideration? Yes. And basically there's 2 tracks. These bacteria from the mouth go down the digestive tract or they go directly into your bloodstream. And it's not just the bacteria themselves, but it's periodontal bacteria, look at that little key in the upper right. They're bacterial byproducts, inflammatory molecules, and there's an inflammatory response, a real pro-inflammatory genetic response. So these are the 3 statistics, and this is why we're on this podcast tonight. 80% of you have some form of gum disease. The link between gum disease to systemic illness, very well established. Thousands and thousands of studies. They keep coming in. But most importantly, the past approaches, nuke everything, antibiotics, antimicrobials. Pharmaceutical companies have been very happy with that approach. but they have been shown to be both ineffectual and harmful when you consider the new science of the microbiome. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the oral microbiome. So how does this happen? How do you go from the healthy gums on the left to the advanced periodontitis? Or I like to say, how do these pretty brownstones go from these nice, neat, well taken care of, safe neighborhood to this? And the answer is, it's all about the terrain. You do not have periodontal pathogens, bad bacteria, fly into your mouth. As a matter of fact, there's no such thing as good bugs and bad bugs. There are bacteria that behave good, we call them probiotics, and there are bacteria that behave bad, folks, and we call those pathogens. And there's something called pleomorphism. There are bacteria in the mouth that are benign and even beneficial, that when their environment is stressed, when their environment is disturbed, they become very, very angry. And we call that the quorum sensing. They exchange genetic information, and yes, they flip a pathogenic switch. So where you want to be healthy in your mouth is right in that circle in the middle. And to the left, you'll notice there's acquired pellicles, very thin on the left. By the way, if you use charcoal and clay and coconut oil pulling and all this stuff, all these fads that people think they're doing something good because, charcoal is good for binding to toxins. But do you know that it can strip that pretty little blue circle in the middle? It can strip that and turn your mouth into the Sahara Desert, which is a sitting duck for lots of different problems. But to the right, you have the opposite problem. You have a scary jungle of lions, tigers, and bears and pathogens. And you see that red of the gum, that's inflammation. So what do we want to do? We want to keep the bacteria in your mouth happy, because basically they do a lot of important things. And I have 3 commandments of the microbiome. 1, we're made of bacteria. Yes, even our human cells may be bacterial in origin. There's a theory about our mitochondria having evolved or even been created from bacteria. And that there are 10 times the number of actual bacteria right now in exchange for our own human cells. There's 10 times the number of bacteria. There's been some modifications of that, but we are greatly outnumbered by those bacteria. Number 2, those bacteria run us, we don't run them. When we try to run them the way we have in the antibiotic wars, we always lose. And we have people sitting in hospitals right now who are resistant to the strongest antibiotics on earth. And the 3rd commandment of the microbiome is make peace with your microbes. Because when you don't, this bacteria on this slide, Fusobacterium nucleatum, it goes everywhere. And it's been implicated in adverse pregnancy outcomes, preterm birth, stillbirth, neonatal sepsis, GI disorders, cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, appendicitis, cardiovascular disease, rheumatoid arthritis, respiratory disease, Lemire syndrome, and Alzheimer's disease. Basically, Fusobacterium nucleatum, it's the most common bacteria in your mouth. It lives there. But when we disturb it, or what I like to say, when we piss these bacteria off, they get pretty nasty. Time magazine, as I said, back in 2006, had a cover on gum disease. The secret killer is inflammation. One of the body's largest sources of inflammation is what's going on in your mouth. Another book I read when I did Harvard's program in complementary and alternative medicine back in 1996 and 97 was this book by Paul Ewald on stealth infections and their relationship to cancers, heart disease, and other deadly ailments. So gum disease is the body's major source of chronic low-grade inflammation. So what do we do about it? We just keep brushing and flossing? Well, I've heard that from when I came out of dental school. When I came out of dental school, I was told that gum disease was epidemic, over 80%. Folks, we're here on this podcast right now. Gum disease remains the same statistic. What is wrong with this picture? And I'm going to explain why. because everything we have been doing has been wrong. And you'll learn a few reasons why we need to do it right. So again, chronic inflammation and its association with systemic diseases, including cancer, well established. By the way, look at the date of this. This is just recent, February 2019. It's been postulated as far back as, well, 2006. But we're starting to see how that link happens. So there's 4 mechanisms and pathways. There's the direct effects of oral infectious pathogens. There's the inflammatory response. There's the inflammatory effects on vascular integrity. And then there's this whole gene polymorphisms to a pro-inflammatory genotype. And one of the things that, besides gum disease, that is a virtual epidemic are this whole problem of jaw cavitations as stealth infections. And most people, actually a lot of dentists, don't even know what cavitations are. There are dentists coming out of school that were never taught about cavitations. Biologic dentists have learned and are learning about cavitations because the reality is that now technology called Conebeam or CBCT, computerized Conebeam computerized tomography. This is a 3D scanning system that is able to see what's going on in your jaw in 3 dimensions. Dental x-rays are becoming more and more obsolete. Dental x-rays are becoming, quite honestly, very ineffectual because a lot of times they don't show these types of defects. And Conebeam machines can cost about $90,000. I guarantee you, most of the insurance dentists and most dentists in general are not going to buy a Conebeam. And they're not going to be able to detect what I'm about to show you right now. Cavitations were talked about as far back as 1915 by the father of modern dentistry. His name was G.V. Black. The term cavitation was coined by an orthopedic surgeon in 1931. Cavities being the slang term for a hole in your tooth, cavitation being a slang term for the hole in your jaw. But G.V. Black talked about these in biopsies and autopsies that he did on human jaws, that there were these areas where there was a necrotic bone. The correct term for a cavitation actually is called cavitational osteonecrosis. But they found that, that there was no pain, no swelling, and no fever. But these necrotic, diseased areas in the jaw existed. It became more significant because people who have chronic autoimmune problems, even Lyme disease, there's lots, this is an ideal necrotic hole in your jaw that can harbor bacterial pathogens, parasites, mold, candida, Lyme spirochetes, even metals, heavy metals. People have heavy metal problems. Where do these form? 90% of these form in extracted teeth. So here is a schematic of a tooth extraction. There's the dental x-ray. A lot of people would look at that dental x-ray and go, oh, it doesn't look bad. Looks like the bone's not that dense. This is what it looks like when you reflect the gum back on the right. It's a hollow hole of dead bone. This became interesting. We started talking about jaw osteonecrosis from people who had surgery after they had bisphosphonate therapy for osteoporosis. They were taking Fosamax and other drugs to help with osteoporosis. And we found that it affected bone metabolism. So if they had any dental surgery, they had these areas of dead bone called jaw osteonecrosis. In actuality, jaw osteonecrosis has been going on for a long time with all kinds of different procedures. So here's a root canal tooth on the left that is, most dentists would say that's a terrible root canal. And then the middle picture shows a root canal that looks like it's done pretty good, and hey, that's okay. When you reflect the gum back, you actually see a very different picture. And that's a cavitation formed from a failing root canal tooth. And, you know, there's a lot of interest right now on root canals or hidden jaw infections actually being opportune locations for Lyme spirochetes to harbor. So it's becoming a very, very hot topic. We have actually gone into cavitations in the jaw and found and cultured Lyme spirochetes existing in these places. It's interesting that most Lyme patients also suffer severe migraine, jaw and head neck pain, pain that radiates, and even TMJ pain has been related to this. So a lot of mouth-body connections with Lyme disease. But getting back and looking at these stealth infections, because I want to tell everyone here, gum disease, cavitations, failing root canals, these are all major, major alarm bells in your mouth for that inflammation as a precursor to not just dysregulation and gut disease and heart disease and autoimmune disease, but cancer, the scary big C, cancer. Folks, you don't just catch cancer. Cancer is an end stage of dysregulation, toxicity, and disease. So in looking at this scan in front of us here, you can see in the back that there are areas on a two-dimensional x-ray that are hard to see. And most panoramic x-rays like this and even dental x-rays don't show these clearly. So we started exploring going away from 2D dental x-rays and going to 3D. We started using MRIs, and you can see the MRI on the right in the circle there. That's what it looked on the dental x-ray above. Most dentists would just ignore that. And then in the surgery below, you can see the actual hole in the jaw. Again, Conebeam computerized tomography, CBCT, is now the diagnostic gold standard. I want everybody, I'm going to sound like the guy in the movie Network, but I want everybody here to go get a Conebeam and see if they have a cavitation. We have them in our offices at Rejuvenation Dentistry, Rejuvenation Health. We can direct you if you contact us. We're happy to do it. The other thing is a lot of dentists cannot read these. Takes months of training to learn to read these. But you can see on the right, the Conebeam and the sagittal section of that incisor below. See that black shadow at the end of the root? That's an infection, and that did not show up on a two-dimensional x-ray. So I'm going to talk for a minute about how I treat this. I developed a protocol, you'll see, CCCP, Curatola Cavitation Care Protocol. The way this used to be done was we would cut the gum back, drill into the jawbone, squirt ozone gas, and close it up. And unfortunately, a very high percentage of those would not heal. The objective here is not just to clean out the disease, but to regenerate the bone. That's the important thing. So, excuse me, one of the advances has been using this PRF, platelet-rich fibrin. PRF is a smart blood concentrate. We draw blood from your arm, spin it down in the centrifuge in the lower right, and in the middle on the bottom there, you'll see there's this gelatin-like material that is actually platelet-rich fibrin, PRF, which is loaded with mesenchymal stem cells to help with regeneration. We combine this with bone augmentation, bone grafting materials, and we stimulate regeneration. The second advance that I introduced was the use of this laser, the BioLase Water Lase 2.0. This accesses that area atraumatically. We never use a drill on the bone. We actually access the cavitation atraumatically. We remove the disease, soften hard tissue, disinfect the area with ozone water. By the way, the laser actually generates ozonated water. Sometimes we'll use some ozone gas, And the advantage of this is it also stimulates regeneration. So here is how we graft and finish this entire procedure. This is by the way, a root canal tooth that was extracted. Look at the size of the cavitation formed from that failing root canal. So we'll disinfect it with the laser. In the middle, you see me mixing some allograft material, some human bone with the PRF, and then we'll place that in there. Another thing that we're doing now is we're using exosomes. Exosomes are really interesting. They're made from adipose tissue. They are nanocarriers of stem cells. So it actually helps to target the stem cells where they're needed the most to cause regeneration. So there's 5 steps you can take to protect and heal your body. You want to avoid root canals when possible. You want to get checked for cavitations. You want to remove infected root canals and cavitations. Build up your immune system. And then we're going to talk about oral care and what we need to be doing, avoiding chemical-containing toothpaste and mouthwash. So what's the difference in what we're doing right now? Let's talk about that. I spent 20 years of my life developing oral care products that respect your mouth and the environment of your mouth, respect the terrain, respects these bacteria. The equivalent, there's Colgate had a toothpaste with triclosan called Colgate Total. Triclosan was the dental equivalent of Roundup, which is glyphosate. Just nuke everything. So what glyphosate was doing in the environment, triclosan was doing in the mouth. When what we really want to be doing, folks, is organic gardening, not the pest. We got to get out of the pesticide business, not only in the environment around us, but in our mouths. So why is there a poison warning on toothpaste? Because guess what? There's enough chemical fluoride in toothpaste that is fatal, yes, fatal to a child under 5, to 2 children under 5. It has no place in our water. I really don't want to get into this, but there's a lot of controversy right now. A lot of very bright dentists who are looking at the science are saying, hey, wait a minute. We've been brainwashed to think that fluoride was going to be the panacea of all dental ills when we have fluoridated communities in this country that have lower rates of decay than non-fluoridated. And so why did this poison warning start? Well, it's an interesting story on how this, if you look under warning, how that happened. The reason a poison warning came on toothpaste is because in 1988, there was a toothpaste called Crest Sparkle that was bubblegum flavored, fluorescent blue, and had sparkles in it. Children were eating this toothpaste. Fluoride fatalities increased 280%. It took them 10 years, but the FDA finally mandated that any toothpaste with fluoride has that warning right there. So we're being overdosed on a chemical, everyone. There's 51 studies that show that drinking fluoridated water lowers IQ in children. It's linked to learning disabilities, behavioral disorders, rapid aging, decreasing in bone density and strength. Can you say osteoporosis? Metabolic dysfunction, autoimmune disease, cognitive decline, and yes, increased risk of cancer. It's time to end this fluoride experiment of the last 60 years. Fluoride does not belong in our water. I don't want to go off on this anymore. I have studied this. I have looked at the science, and there is a huge political lobby to keep this thing going. And I'm going to tell you it's wrong. And I'm saying it's bordering on immoral. And the science backs up this statement. Yeah, there was a chemical used by Colgate Total. This is from the New York Times. It was linked to cancer. Took them a long time to take it out. As a matter of fact, they had ads like this. By the way, that's my Bitmoji on the left. I read this while I was on vacation in Europe, laying on a chase lounge trying to react. I got People magazine, and I'm reading, Kelly Ripa getting paid I don't know how many $1 million to promote Colgate toothpaste and mouthwash by the fact that it eliminates 15 times more bacteria to improve the health of your mouth. That's a downright lie. that is just misleading advertising. Destroying the bacteria in your mouth is like destroying a coral reef protecting an island. This is based on a failed, outdated science of the germ theory, not the new microbiome science that says we want to get out of the pesticide business. We want to promote microbial homeostasis. So I developed a product shortly after that. I knew I had to change what people were putting in their mouths, and I developed something that promotes microbial homeostasis. It rebalances the natural oral microbiome in your mouth. By the way, the oral microbiome protects you, it keeps you alive. The bacteria in your mouth in this community called the microbiome helps to remineralize your teeth by acting as an intelligent, semi-permeable membrane that transports bacteria from saliva. The bacteria transports minerals from saliva to your teeth. There's a communication between saliva, bacteria, and your teeth that works in a balanced system. So when we started doing research on Revitin, we found that in 1 week we reduced inflammation more than Colgate Total was reporting from their studies done in the Philippines after 12 weeks. We did another study, a double-blind clinical study in Italy to stay out of the wrath of the FDA, who would want to call a product that all the ingredients in this product, by the way, all the ingredients in this product, the CoQ10, vitamin C, D3, vitamin E, K2, manicillin 7, MSM, and the microminerals with organic oils and organic whole leaf stevia. By the way, most of those came out of a whole health food store when we first put this together. But because it was so effective, look how effective. 72% reduction in bleeding, 46% reduction in plaque, 42% reduction in gingival inflammation. We can't make those claims on the product. We could say this is what the clinical study showed, but because it's regulated as a cosmetic and not a drug, we can only say promotes a healthy oral environment, keeps the pink off your toothbrush. Take a look at this picture. This is 4 days. On the left is a patient, didn't do anything else but change the toothpaste they're using. And you can see, especially on the incisors to the right, look at the puffy gum between the eye tooth and the lateral incisor, and it's almost normal. And that's 4 days of just changing what you're using in your mouth. Folks, I developed a toothpaste because I was ashamed of what people were using and what the major consumer products companies were doing. This is a doctor who came to me at a meeting I was speaking at in, I think it was Salt Lake City, Utah. And he said he needed gum surgery. These are his actual periodontal records that he had printed out, and he brought them to me because in June, this is what on the left was June, on the right, 3 months later, he went to his dentist, and his dentist said, "What the hell did you do? Your mouth," he had two teeth that had a little bit of bleeding. He didn't need the gum surgery. So I copied these. I wrote a HIPAA release on a napkin to use these. And it's the first time I ever wrote a HIPAA release on a Marriott hotel napkin. And I had him get up at the Marriott hotel, that's his picture on the upper right, because I get reports like this all the time. So we need to stop the insanity, respect the microbiome in your mouth, get a Conebeam, and see a biologic dentist for safe removal of mercury fillings and other things, and evaluate, go to a specialist in jaw osteonecrosis who can evaluate your Conebeam, and you can get the proper treatment. And by then, I think, you have a healthy mouth, you have a much greater chance of having a healthy body, and your healthcare costs will be lower. I always say good dentistry may be expensive, but not as expensive as bad dentistry, folks. So thank you for this time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this. And I'll turn this back over to Charles and Jeff.
All right. Excuse me. That was fantastic. And it is amazing, when you really think about it, it's so commonsensical what you're talking about. And but when you see the myriad ways it affects your body, it is pretty dramatic. And, sadly, it is a missing moment in our lives. And for sure, everybody's like, well, is that doctor in my plan? And it's all about my dental insurance.
Yeah.
And of course,
They're slaves. It's like they're slaves in a system.
Well, and the other weird disconnect is, we're engaged in all this stuff in the medical world. So there's your doctor and the heart, this and the primary care, and there's this and that, and all these different doctors. But who's missing is that no one ever mentions like a dentist.
Hello. That's exactly right.
It's just like, that's like some other, that's like almost talking about like a psychiatrist almost or something. So far removed.
You know what?
From
I wanted to share. It's so true. I want to just share one thing. Is this Jeff? Jeff?
Yes, it's Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff. Hi. I don't want to mix you two guys up, but I have to tell you that biologic dentistry is really rooted in a European system that never split up medicine and dentistry. It was never like they did 150 years ago in this country. And by the way, Jeff and Charles, my lifelong ambition as a practitioner now for 37 years, I want to see the wall come down between medicine and dentistry. And I'm going to be very honest with you. You guys are doing it with these kinds of innovative, affordable healthcare programs. You're doing it because a dentist now, people can be consumers of healthcare and be informed and educated better because, I don't want to get into all of the system of the health insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and the medical system being this incestuous brew. But the reality is in Europe, they never divorced the mouth from the rest of the body. You went to medical school and then you subdivided into cardiology, dentistry, neurology, pathology. It was never split up. So the orientation of the mouth was always considered essential to the body.
Excellent.
They also didn't cut off the feet and tell the doctors that wanted to work there to go to podiatry school.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. It's so bizarre. Paul, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Great presentation, by the way. I actually had a couple questions, but let me just start with this one. When we talk about the pathogens traveling to the rest of the body, do you think is it like mostly the bloodstream doing that, the enteric system, inhalation, or lymph? What?
That's a fantastic question. We have been looking, when I go back, and I do want to go, I had a slide that actually had the channels. We're seeing, I think it's too far back, but what we're seeing mostly is blood. I mean, we used to think, now this is the interesting thing. They have taken plaque, bacterial plaque, off the cusp of the mastodon, frozen in a glacier. They put it on a petri dish at body temperature, and the bacteria start unfolding and flourishing. So we used to think that the enteric system going down the gut, the hydrochloric acid in the stomach kills everything. Now we know that's not true. So bacteria from your mouth could go into your gut. We also know that in the blood, when you have bleeding gums, you're almost always, by the way, a study came out several months ago, a study came out that people with severe gum disease shouldn't floss because they'll actually introduce periodontal pathogens into the bloodstream much more easily. So I have patients actually rub Revitin on their gums, go to sleep with it on, reduce the inflammation, improve the soft tissue response, and then flossing down the road, absolutely. But they're advised not to floss. I wish I could have put that study up, but that's an excellent question. So again, the answer, I'm always way more suspicious of the bloodstream, number one, lymph secondary, but bloodstream. Then you have, by the way, I inject tonsils with Procaine and some lymphatic drainage. There's a product called Lymphodem that opens up lymphatic drainage, because a lot of people, that's one thing that a biologic dentist should do, is lymphatic drainage is clogged when your tonsils are clogged. Your tonsils are like the pool filters. So when they got clogged in the old days, they ripped them out. It's like ripping the pool filter out. What you really want to do is clean the filter. So I will routinely on patients that I need good lymphatic drainage post-surgically of cavitations, I want to inject the lymph with Procaine is it's a mild anesthetic that promotes lymphatic drainage. And Lymphodin is another thing, but there are, it's very important. I'm glad you mentioned lymph. And then of course the enteric system is another way that these pathogens can travel.
David, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Jeff. Dr. Jerry, I just ordered a tube of Revitin prebiotic toothpaste on Amazon. Jeff had recommended it. What are your recommendations on mouthwash and water picks? And tell me more about the overnight paste you mentioned.
Yeah. Mouthwash. Most mouthwash is strictly a cosmetic at best. We're coming out with a Revitin mouthwash that has the whole prebiotic formulation. I like water picks. I like water picks for a number of reasons. I like water picks for stimulation of the soft tissue, circulatory stimulation, debriding, of course, debriding, circulatory stimulation, lymphatic drainage. I think water picks, hydromassage is an excellent adjunctive therapy, but it's not an exchange for getting unhealthy biofilm. Now that I know I'm raising a lot of questions right now. Basically, we don't want to nuke the plaque in your mouth. We want to restore it and make it healthy. A lot of times, what is an unhealthy microbiome? That's thick, sticky plaque that you wake up in the morning and you're like, ooh, I have this white goo on my teeth. Healthy plaque is a thin, clear, invisible film. So I mentioned coconut oil pulling, for example, and I was like, well, you know, coconut oil pulling can strip the microbiome and make it like the Sahara Desert in your mouth. Well, that's only if you do it for a long period of time. So if you have a thick, grungy mouth, oil pulling can be effective to help getting, because oil pulling, there's nothing fancy about it other than it's an ancient Ayurvedic practice, a detergent practice for cleaning or removing unhealthy deposits in the mouth. Doing that for a short period of time is fine, but I don't really recommend oil pulling more than a week. I'd recommend going to Revitin or just starting with Revitin. But there are people that, you know, another thing about oil pulling is you got to spend 20 minutes doing it versus most people brush for 3 minutes or less. Does that answer your question?
I think that was good. That was good. I see some of their names in here, but they're in a 508 area code. You had your hand up?
Yeah.
Who was that? Got themselves muted here. I have you unmuted. Yes, no? Okay, Charles, I think I saw your hand too.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Sorry. So, Dr. Curatola, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, the cash-taking nature of these higher-level holistic dentists can be a roadblock for patients who otherwise would like to go more regularly, as they should,
Right.
for the cleanings and that prevention that's so clear, because none of us water pick and floss enough or Revitin enough. So give me some price structure.
It's, you know, I just want to tell you, by the way, we are establishing actually a preventative plan, because what you just said is so right on, is that prevention is key. You need diagnosis. You need people that can't even afford to do big, expensive reconstructive dentistry. If they're coming to us for preventative care, that's not going to get more expensive and break down more. But, you know, a lot of people, you know, the people that need, let's say, a very large amount of debt, $20,000 of dentistry, you know, those are people that are like, what? I need $20,000. I'll never get, you know, and they tend to put it off And then it's 25,000, and then their mouths are falling apart. Then they're trying to go to the guy for 15,000 or 10,000, and that's even worse. Then they got bigger problems. Then they're totally, upset that they if they only did the work to start with. The reality is we always find a way to triage people with large dental treatment plans. If a patient is committed to their care, we will be committed to working with them through each stage of the process, giving them extended payment plans, giving them the ability, and what you guys are doing with doubling the amount that they put in. And one of the things that we're doing, though, is we're putting together an annual preventative program where you pay one fee and it covers everything. Your cleanings for the year, your checkup exams, your x-rays, your consultation time. It even covers an emergency visit. That's something that we're launching in Q1 2020 because a lot of people that would just really benefit. So we're doing that for groups of 3 or more. So, and that's 3 unrelated groups, not like a family of 3, but 3 unrelated groups. So it kind of incentivizes people to kind of work together. And then we're able to, and they will save, just in addition to what they'll save with your plan, they'll actually, it ends up working out where they get a free maintenance visit a year as well.
What something like that going to run?
For an individual, I think it's like $6.25. I'm not sure, or $8.25. I don't want to, you know what, I'm embarrassed to say I don't have it, but I know it's around.
Oh, it's okay. It gives us a little.
But it covers, quarterly cleanings. That's another thing. Going to the dentist twice a year if you have gum disease is not indicated. You need to see your dentist once a season. Once a season. And that is basically every 3 months.
Yeah, and that's important. And I know from most people, my own inclusive, is typically twice a year is a standardized kind of way to go, and every other time.
Yeah, that was a made up fact.
I'm sure.
That was like, I think the consumer products companies did that. Brush and floss and see your dentist twice a year. There was no scientific basis to that.
It just sounded good.
The dentists were like, "Oh, they're coming to me twice a year. Okay."
Mark that down in my playbook. That's classic.
I've had people just come to me out of network all the time because the dentistry they got in my office, I'm practicing 37 years. Some of these patients have come to me for 30 years. And I remember like maybe 10 or 15 years into practice, they were like, "Oh, you're not on my plan. I'm going to go to somebody on my plan." And 3 years later, they're coming back going, "The guy was terrible. This is not right. That's not right. This is, I hurt with this." And I don't know. They needed all the work redone.
Sure.
And they were happy to pay out of pocket for it. So they didn't want to go through this again.
Nope.
And when you think about the systemic health issues related to bad dentistry, it's mind-boggling.
It is. I see Jane. I think your hand is up.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. We've been having some trouble connecting. Hi, Gary. It's Jane Dolan. How are you?
Jane, so good to hear from you. I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I'm in D.C. with Angela McDonald from the Biomed Center.
That's great.
And
hi, Angela.
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic.
My pleasure.
Can you talk about healing cavities without drilling and filling? Your toothpaste and ozone?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. I didn't hear that last thing. I'm sorry.
So I'm sure you're going to talk about your toothpaste and ozone, or I'm hoping that you do.
Yeah. So here's the story about your teeth having the ability to heal. There's something called the cyalomicrobial dental complex. Saliva, bacteria, teeth. The way teeth remineralize is your natural oral microbiome transports ionic minerals from saliva. Got a little tongue-tied when I talked about this earlier, but it transports ionic calcium and ionic phosphorus to the surface of your teeth. You need a healthy microbiome to be able to do that. That's why Revitin being a prebiotic, by the way, I didn't say probiotic, I said prebiotic. Probiotics don't work in the mouth because introducing foreign bacteria, good or bad, your oral microbiome makes it very inhospitable for any foreign bacteria, good or bad, to set up shop. It's also why when you eat a hamburger with salmonella, you'll wreck your gut, but you don't really get a salmonella infection in your mouth. So there's this protective ability of the oral microbiome. But you can disturb the oral microbiome by a diet that's why when we shift the pH in the mouth to a more acidic pH with refined carbohydrates and sugars, the microbiome is disturbed. So it's not, bad bacteria fly in or the sugar has acid that melts your teeth or causes cavities. It's this imbalance in the terrain. So let's talk about ozone because you brought that up. Ozone is very good at arresting decay. So if there is active decay, I will use ozone because it kills bacteria, unhealthy bacteria, imbalanced bacteria in that cavity. And then it will also sclerose the dentin. So your tooth has an enamel, a dentin, which is a bunch of tubules and has a pulp in the middle. So the interesting thing is that these dentinal tubules are porous. So the bacteria can go deeper. But when you use ozone, it kills the surface bacteria and it scleroses or seals the tubules. By the way, I also use ozone all the time to stop tooth sensitivity because tooth sensitivity is usually because these tubules are open. So a product like Sensodyne, which has grown into such a tremendous product that is loaded with toxins, loaded with chemicals, everything from saccharin, potassium nitrate, but it uses this potassium nitrate to kind of clog the dental tubules so the tooth is less sensitive. What would you rather do? Use a chemical toothpaste product with a poison warning or use ozone to seal those tubules, stop the progression of decay? Now, after that, you really want the microbiome healthy so it can transport ionic minerals to the tooth for that cavity to heal. Now, small cavities can heal. Cavities that have not penetrated deep into the dental, past the dental enamel junction, they can heal. They can actually the healing is a nice way of calling remineralization. So we want to do exactly that, is promote a healthy microbiome so this dental cyalomicrobial complex can function properly. I'm sorry I gave such a long response, but did that answer everything?
No, that was very, very good. And unfortunately, we've reached the conclusion of our time here for today. And obviously, we could just kept on going and kept on going. So I want to thank you for today. This was great.
Hey, my pleasure.
And just so everyone can see, we definitely set up a special website to get access to that toothpaste and some other stuff coming up. And here it is. It's in case sensitive. It's bit.ly/R and then all lowercase Revitin. So it's capital Revitin. And again,
Beautiful.
Thanks very much. And we'll see everyone next go around.